Hi everyone, my name is Stan Switch. I'm a product designer, marketer, and founder. Today, our guest is going to be Javan Wang. Javan is a product designer at Shopify. So he focuses on using AI in his process. So there's going to be a lot of interesting topics regarding how to combine use of AI with Figma. What tools can work in which manner? We're going to talk a little bit about this transition from Canvas to chat interface as a experimentation feature. But probably the most interesting part that we're gonna find here is, first of all, figuring out what is the role of Figma in this process. I remember there is a part where Javan says like he doesn't open that much Figma anymore, but still there is a place where it's necessary and it's better and it's more handy. And the highlight for me personally in this episode is comparison of the process of big company like Shopify, the process that he uses where he works with his team on established design system, and comparing it to working on his own side projects where he creates something for his friends, where everything needs to be created from scratch, totally from zero. It's going to be a really interesting chat. I highly encourage you to stay till the very end because we're going to talk some tips and tricks regarding portfolio and case studies. So everybody, welcome Javan. Okay. Hello everybody, it's Stan from Nueva. Welcome to Life After UI podcast. Today, we're gonna talk with Javan. He works as a senior designer at Shopify. We're gonna go through a lot of topics, including AI, including tools, and how everything changed with Figma and with other tools that designers currently use. We're gonna talk about the workflow, and at the very end, we're gonna give some tips of how might portfolio of modern designer look these days. So, Javan, it's good to see you.
Great to be on the show, Stan. Thanks for having me.
Okay, so I saw that you have quite a lot of experience. You were working in Intel, you were working on HoloLens, right? You were working on tools that pretty much shifted to AI very quickly. And right now you're at Shopify. So how does it feel to be in the middle of this huge transition that we are in right now?
I would say have been one of the earlier adopters of this new crazy suite of tools that we've experienced. And definitely earlier on when, ChatGPT was blowing up the internet, so to speak, it felt like drinking from a fire hose, so to speak, in terms of the amount of new content that's being generated, amount of directions. I think when ChatGPT and generative AI, especially for image generation, was first rolling out, there was a lot more kind of like there was a mix of hype and also quite a bit of negativity if you think about it, right? Because I think there were a lot of scathing reports at the time that said everyone's going to be out of work in 2 years' time. And a lot of that we have seen kind of like come to fruition, but like the so-called the doomsday scenario hasn't exactly happened. But like for the way I've been navigating the space is really just trying to focus on what I can control, which is practicing and using these tools as much as I can, familiarizing myself with them, and not so much on the stuff that's necessarily outside of my control. But I would say the most important, like one of the biggest aspects of it is like my technical proficiency within like software development as a whole has increased quite a lot. It wasn't like an intended outcome when I first started doing it. Like my very first foray into AI is just like, okay, I could save some time, writing an email, or like, oh, I'm a pretty big gamer myself. I've always liked making like little tools like game calculators. It's like, oh, you put in your stats, like you want to optimize your stats, your optimize your gear. Like I always liked web apps like that. And I never got around to fully learning, HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. Like that was kind of some of my first projects, is just building little fun. I built like a taco night planner with my group of friends. And that was something I was never able to do before. Through that, I learned a lot like about like, oh, how local storage works in your browser, how like data persists, like what is server side, what
Yeah.
is client side. It's kind of like by happenstance, I ended up picking up a lot of this stuff. And now it's just kind of like I have a better appreciation for technical complexity, but also at the same time, it helped me build a shared vocabulary with engineers
Yes.
working. I would say like that's probably the biggest takeaway from how it's really changed the way I approach work and software development as a whole.
Yes. It kind of feels like we're all software developers right now, right? Everybody is responsible for bigger chunks. And I kind of like this quote that I've heard a couple of podcasts ago, that this lines between positions, they are kind of blurry right now. We're a little bit of managers, right? We are a little bit of developers, a little bit of testers as well. So everything kind of merged into the shape that we have today. Um, uh, Everybody listening, just one note. If you hear explosions in background on my side, this is just something we have to this is normal. This is just Las Fallas. I live in Valencia. So in case there is a noise, don't worry, I'm safe. This is normal. But Javan, maybe, as you said, you were going slowly first by introducing AI in your emails and then slowly going up and up. Maybe you could tell a little bit about this journey of exploring AI. How did it start for you? You say emails. So, let's go through the process.
Um, I definitely started playing around with it first. I think just like one thing that I really like about Shopify is we have a pretty strong stance on like play is the competitive advantage, as in like you, in order to know how to use a tool for your actual profession, is very strongly, it's good to play around with it, do side projects with it, do stuff that gives you energy, that you're kind of like building proficiency in a way that is sustainable and very like motivated, that gives you energy. And by the time you actually need to use it to work, it becomes like um part of your intuition already. So I'm a big gamer and I do a lot of tabletop role-playing games. So like
Okay.
I'm I don't know if anyone else has played D&D or hosted D&D games before, but like there's a lot of kind of like scheduling that goes into it, coordinating, you're pitching like a frame. It's like, hey, you want to play my world? We're gonna do like a vampire castle experience, right? So I use my earliest like adoption of that. It's super unserious, which is literally just like helping me write the story beats and the monsters that the players will encounter when they're going to like a vampire's castle. Like this type of stuff, it normally would have taken, like 7-8 hours, but it's like I still enjoy the process, kind of teasing that out, but there's less like need to do every single one of those beats and looking through tons of pages of documentations to do it now. It just became a lot more efficient. But of course, like this is basically like storytelling, but in a fun way, if you think about it, right? It's like creating a structure. So like these types of things, they became very transferable. Like if I never needed to host like a workshop at work or schedule participants there for research. So it's like, oh, I've already been there, done that, doing a lot of these things already. Let me just kind of like stream that in and bring that kind of workflow into my work. And one of the projects I was really proud of early on is this like little taco planner app where like it's literally, it was for like a taco night where everyone is supposed to bring in like two toppings that they really want.
Okay.
And then, but it's like for Paula coordinating, right? Everyone brings in their own ingredients. That's kind of what it is. But the thing is like you needed the data itself to persist. In order to have it persist, you either need to generate a shareable link that's stored in the URL, or you need to have it hosted on a server somewhere. And like even something as simple as this, it doesn't really seem complex at all, right? This took me like basically like a whole week of running out of my free credits on V0 at the time to just build something like that. But these sort of kind of like foundational reps like help me explore other projects. Like when now I'm like doing prototyping at work, for example, like I'm able to kind of like spin these things fast a lot quicker, and I'm able to understand like, hey, we can't have this type of data showing up in the front end because XYZ needs to persist in the back end, et cetera, et cetera. So it's like you learn by it's really like edutainment in a way for
Yeah.
myself, if that makes sense. So
Yeah, I kind of like this separation you're talking about, because often when we are doing work, right, when we are tight on the schedule and we have to deliver, you just default to stuff that because you want to make it safe, you want to deliver, you go fast. So introducing AI, if you don't really have a full grasp on it, if you don't fully understand it, it's very risky because you're introducing it in a very, let's say, vulnerable process, right? And by doing this, let's say, side quests, this small projects on the side, you kind of have the safe space to explore with this technology. And if something breaks, pretty much nothing happens, right? Maybe somebody brings wrong taco toppings, but that's the top of disaster. So it's not really that bad. And I kind of love this separation of play where you're just playing around with it in a safe space and with no super strict deadlines. And then this knowledge that you kind of gather through it is transferable to the work that you do, right? That's I see right now in portfolios of designers, there's this section of playground where designers kind of show their raw ideas. I guess this is what Dribble was supposed to be, but it never became this. And I think this is kind of it. It's just like playing with the tools, showing, something on the side. And then you take those skills and, as you said, with scheduling the workshops, right? Suddenly the same skills are applicable over there. So yeah, that's very interesting to see. So you said that you are using V0. What tools have you explored?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, earlier on, I was on a ChatGPT free plan, just trying stuff out, V0 free plan. But because of the credit limits at the time, I quickly, bought a ChatGPT Pro subscription, bought like V0's Pro subscription at the time that gives you more prompts. Um, but these days, especially for work, we have access to Claude Code, and I would say probably that's my bread and butter nowadays. It was a pretty big shift though, because if you think about it, it's like, I don't know if folks are familiar with Lovable or V0 or even Figma Make for that matter. You have what's being built on the right hand side, and you have the chat interface on the left hand side. And the chat, at least it's formatted and structured in a way that is more similar to literally, like texting, right? That's kind of what the UI is meant to resemble. Claude Code, it was a little bit like, whoa, what am I looking at? Because you're kind of going into a terminal-based interface. You're not looking at the thing you're building; it's more just imagining it. You can have it open in a browser, but that's on the side and is not integrated as part of the same panel. So it took a bit of learning curves, like a little bit, to just get familiarized with terminal and like reading and parsing through all the text there. But once I kind of got over that hump, like I would say probably that's my most used tool today. And we have a couple really cool internal tools as well for uploading prototypes quickly called Quick. Um, so
Mhm.
let's say normally if you want to deploy something and you need to hook it up to like APIs, or you need to launch it on a server, like you have to basically figure out how to do the hosting deployment yourself. Most of the time for cheaper projects, I just use GitHub, but like internally, we have this thing. Basically, you just upload your entire folder of projects into this like container, and it launches and deploys everything. It's like automatically
But
for
that's easy.
yeah, super
Yeah.
slick. And it basically, you don't have to do any of the hookup for the AI APIs or like even our internal data APIs and stuff like that. It just connects automatically, and like you can load stuff in live. It's like super
Okay,
slick.
yeah. Yeah, that's what I would call a perfect playground, Because like all this NV files, all this API keys and stuff like that, like the boring stuff pretty much is just handled for you, So uh, maybe you could tell the story of because I think with AI it's kind of the slippery slope. It's kind of like with the stories. First one is free, and then you're like free AM, and you're going hard with it because it's addicting, I would say. And you can see results so fast that for me personally, last weeks, I personally am using Cloud Code in an app. I just prefer it like that. But I found myself I'm not an early riser. I like to sleep, but lately I'm waking up at 6 a.m. because I just want to do more. Maybe you could tell how did you get addicted to AI? Let's say first you started with this ChatGPT, you say, right? But then you bought this first subscription, and then if I understand you correctly, you're testing these various tools and you switch to Claude. Is this the curve?
Went through phases for sure. I was using Cursor for a long time before I got more familiar with Claude. I would say it's like the jump. It's like V0 is more user friendly in a way, like
Yeah.
less scary for designers. I don't like kind of to say that, but like if you think about it, these are kind of two different modes of thinking fundamentally. One is canvas based, very visual thinking oriented,
Mm-hmm.
spatial visual. Whereas if you look at terminal-based interfaces, that's very like text-based, not very visual. It's more conceptual. So if you could plot that on two ends of the spectrum, what does that look like? V0 is a little bit closer to Figma. And then after V0, it's kind of like Cursor, where you're seeing the code live in there, but you can still see what's being changed. And there's the very right-hand side is Claude Code, where it's just more, I'm going to trust you to do your thing. I'm just having a
Yeah.
conversation. Very not visual,
Oh.
right? Very text-based. Um,
Yeah,
but
yeah, I
for
see. So that's kind of the transition from first to you added chat to the canvas, and then remove the canvas altogether for just chatting with Cloud.
yeah, the question is
Yeah.
like, what is the correct layer of abstraction? I discussed this with a bunch of other designers as well. I think what most people are saying, it's like just like how Figma's existence didn't really remove pen and paper sketching or, doodling on sticky notes, right? It's just a way to get your thoughts out at a certain level of fidelity. It's about the accessibility, it's about speed, it's about like what's the most easy way for you to generate creative thinking. Um,
Uh-huh.
so I think one thing doesn't necessarily replace the other, so to speak.
Okay, but let's talk about a hot thing, which is use of Figma. If you were to estimate how much Figma and how much AI do you use in your daily work right now, how would you divide that?
Um, I use Figma a scarily little amount these days. Um, so okay, if there's the project I'm working on is being built from existing design assets, like Shopify has Polaris as the design system. All the components are well documented, they're fully fleshed out, and for the most part, we're kind of just assembling the Lego pieces. Basically, don't need to touch Figma in the sense that previously, if it's just a pretty low ambiguity design from a design execution perspective, I'm just assembling components and dragging rectangles around in Figma anyways. I don't need Figma for that anymore, right? I can just do it directly within code. But if it's something that has a higher degree of creativity, or it kind of goes outside of the boundaries of the existing design system, or in many cases, like when I'm working on a side project, I need to generate brand new assets. That's where I'll basically dig into Figma. Hey, I'm going to be sketching out like an icon using the pen tool, SVGs, playing around with different layouts. Like that is probably still my preferred system of work, but it really just depends on the how innovative you want to go, like from a visual execution perspective.
Okay, yeah. So, I think that as we go more and more into this AI world, a lot of UIs, let's say, as we know them, won't be necessary because there will be just chat. So our work won't be so visual, right? It will be more about the logic, how it works, what it does, and something that I'd say maybe software architects or, people like this role is changing, I would say, from purely visual perspective to something more. I mean, we used to do with flows and all of that, right? But um, yeah, I think there's a possibility of big shifts in this space. So you said about two core flows. One is for the side projects where you're doing everything from ground up, and the second one is while you work in Shopify and you have design system, you have pretty much all the bricks, and you just need to work with them. Let's talk about the flow that you have in where you already work on established design system. How does your process look like? Let's say, there's new feature, there's new module to introduce from the very beginning. How does your process look like?
Starting off from everything, I still need to understand the problem space, understand the data. If there's a kickoff or a product brief document where the problem we're solving, the solution that we're pitching, it's all properly documented, I'm still gonna be a human and go in and read through that. That's my first point. If I have questions, typically in the pre-AI world, you could go in, ping somebody, ask them questions, comment in the doc, etc. You'll have a little bit of back and forth. But usually, what I find really helps for me these days is I have Claude Code hooked up to 3 different MCPs. The Slack MCP, so it talks to Slack. It talks to my entire Google Workspace stack, so like Gemini notes, Gemini recordings, like my emails, and internally we have like a project management tool. You can think of it kind of like Jira basically, but for our internal. So that our internal thing has documentations on like product principles and also how past reviews and projects were pitched and feedback that was given. So kind of overarching like leadership philosophy on what good product and what good design looks like. So those are kind of like 3 things. I ask Claude Code to pull insights from all 3, understand that as a baseline layer, and then go into the existing project that I'm doing, whether that's a Slack channel, whether that's a series of docs. I basically just paste the context and be like, okay, can you kind of break that down for me, right? And I'll just have a conversation with Claude to get a sense of like, what is the core problem to be solving? What is the thing that I'm missing? And what are some follow-up questions I should be directing towards the working group next time that I have FaceTime with them. So I found that really kind of accelerates the way I would kind of synthesize like really dense problem spaces. And that's been like probably the biggest time saver for me is just I'm spending a lot less time stuck in ambiguity and more time breaking that down, right? Like at least you're breaking down like a giant blob problem into known unknowns and unknown unknowns. Right? You know what I mean? Kind of dividing that up.
Yes, exactly.
These are the questions I need to be asking. So
I see. Yeah, that's kind of very good use case, right? Because usually there is already existing knowledge that you can refer to, right? So if you just synthesize it and if you talk through it, you can pretty much ask questions till you reach those where you actually have to ask somebody. It's kind of like on Reddit. Sometimes people ask for something and people just reply, "Okay, this topic's been talked about like 50 times," right? So you're kind of avoiding that. It's a really interesting use case. So let's say, all right, you had a conversation with Claude, you got some additional questions, you followed up with your team, you have full understanding. What happens right now?
we'll start exploring different solutions. Typically, I like to just start in Claude Code. Basically, just say, okay, we have a problem space. Here's the existing solutions. Here's the existing app that we have. We need to do X, Y, Z on the scaffolding. Let's give me your best shot, right? And I literally just like to send Claude off on a goose chase. Some people are probably gonna cringe at the way I'm doing things. It's quite pedestrian to be honest, but that's usually typically what I do these days. I just let Claude do a first approach and do a first cut of what makes sense. If I don't have a clear vision and idea for what should be done already, because at the end of the day, I think me personally, I'm still a very visual thinker. If I don't see like an artifact in front of me to kind of grok and react to, it's a little bit like it's still a little bit of like a blank canvas problem, right? But it's just in a different form now. So, but if I have a really clear idea, let's say, okay, we need a chat box that can expand. That's agentic. It shifts here, it transitions there. We need the panel to look like that, right? Then I'll just articulate that as my requirements. Either send it as a voice recording or just like a write up of, hey, this should do this should do that, and I'll like, so like it depends on how much divergency that I need and how much clarity I already have in my mind. But to kind of answer your question more directly, if I have really good clarity and understanding of the problem space already, I would just start prescribing what the solution is and see where it lands as a first cut, generally.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I've Do you explore a couple of different solutions in parallel, or you prefer to like chase one and see if this works out, and then only if it doesn't work, chase the others? This episode is sponsored by us. We are paying for everything, for tools, for management, for pretty much everything that goes into production of these videos. Our core goal is to share the knowledge of design, of AI with everybody who wants to learn for free. This podcast is and will always be for free, but if you wish to support us and help us in this venture, I would really appreciate it. You can go to our website, which is nueva.design, and over there is a $9 package that helps us create content like this. This is totally optional. Thank you for being with us. And now back to the podcast.
Depends on how that first iteration lands, I would say. But oftentimes, what I really like to do is basically, okay, I send you on a goose chase, right? You're now at like a fork, and I'm like, I'm not sure about how to do it. Can you spin up 3 variants that can be toggled through via like a dropdown or a segmented control? Just be like, okay, build out variant A with these trade-offs, variant B with these trade-offs, variant C with these trade-offs. Do all 3 at the same time and show me the thing so I can make a decision. Usually kind of from there, I can now like evolve the next phase. Will be like, you know what? I like this experience from A, but I like the layout in C better. And now I'm just going to be like merge the two and then, collapse it. And then just kind of like you're forking your, in traditional design, we have like the double diamond, right? Where you're diverging and
Yeah,
then
yeah, yeah.
converging, diverging, converging. Like I'm still doing that, but just doing it at a much more like rapid pace now and at a
This is
much,
the
much
thing.
smaller
This is
scale.
the thing. When I talk with designers, because I talk with a lot of designers, and I tell them like when we use the words double diamond, a lot of people cringe. They're like, "Oh, come on, this is the old way." But I really think that it is still applicable. We are kind of still doing the same thing of exploring solutions, then like generating questions, then kind of coming up with what are we gonna do, and then again the various solutions if you want to explore those, and then coming back to the primary main core solution. So I kind of think that there is some form of double diamond still, but it's just quicker. It's smaller.
Right. It's more like it's like almost like an unfair stigma against double diamond. I'm gonna be
Yeah,
it's gonna be a bit of a hot take, but no, you definitely it's like when you're understanding all the information you have, you're really diverging, right? You're synthesizing stuff from okay, this old project referenced this thing, and then the let's say leadership requested this like this feedback here. We need to do it this way. This pattern is more outdated. That's you are still gathering context. That's divergent thinking in a way, right? Then when you're converging, you're like, okay, let me synthesize all that and conform on an overarching product direction that I can go and explore. Same thing for the prototyping, right? Nobody starts and ends with the same prototype that's a linear line. It always evolves, and then you eliminate, and then you always evolve, and then you eliminate. You're doing it just it's just at a smaller scale now than it is before, hey, like everyone sit in the room, we have to do this for X amount of time. For 2 sprints, we have to do divert. It's just not like that anymore, but that still happens, but I think at a different time scale. At the end of the day, these are
yes.
just tools in our toolkit. So
Yeah. But the workflow is kind of similar because in Figma it would still, make a couple of screens, look at them, then compare them. How does it look like? But then right now your canvas is just like Google Chrome or, whatever you use as a browser, I would say, and your interface is Claude. Let's say you generated everything, and now do you uh, do you even use Figma when you have the final result to like do the final touches, or looking at the uh, actual cases that you had, do you actually need to open Figma anymore?
I so different designers in the org will have very different perspectives on this.
Yes,
And I don't think there's a right or wrong way to do it. I can only talk about my personal
exactly.
approach currently, which is I'll do the prototyping in a playground environment. If the code is fairly trivial to implement, then I will just kind of like port that code over to our production code base, iterate it from there. But more often than I would say that's in a very rare case, like 10% of the time. Because Shopify at the end of the day is a very, very complex ecosystem with lots of interdependent services, etc. Um, what I'm more likely to do is basically replicate or at least port the prototype that I have, recreate it in Figma, make it pixel perfect, make sure all the animations are tuned in, um, you know, down to the millisecond, down to the spring animations, then um, basically pass it off, like add the documentation within Figma and then pass it off to the development team to either build or, I'll like sit and pair with it. It's not so much of a handoff as it is like hey, I'm done this thing. Let's like work on this together and kind of bring this into the next
Mm,
stage of
yes.
fruition. Does that make sense?
Yes.
I would say I'm more deeply involved in the PR review process now than ever before, just because Claude can help me go through a lot of the code and describe the behavior when some of the
Yes.
code might have been arcane to me before. Or like a dev had to translate what the code is to me in plain language, like, oh, in this, we need like a placeholder image for this failsafe state, or like, hey, there's an edge case where we're missing data. What do we show here? Right. Stuff like that. But now, like with the help of Claude, I can review PRs and basically just kind of articulate what those edge cases need to be and describe it. But I would say Figma still serves an important process. And I would say the final mile where you're documenting and doing the handoff, so to speak, but not too much else beyond that now, I would say.
So interesting. So in this specific case that you're talking, Figma is more like, so you're doing the whole exploration with Claude because it's just faster, right? So you're using Claude as an exploration tool. And then when you have it, you pour it into Figma. So this is like a snapshot of how this thing looks like. So you kind of have everything in one place. And then even if you want to come back to it later on, you see all the screens, you have like flows laid out, right? And you don't have to, because what I think with prototype, the problem is you see only one screen at a time, and if you want to see everything, you kind of have to click everything, go through it. And with Figma, you kind of take it apart so you see everything on canvas. So correct me if I'm wrong, but from what I'm hearing, it's Cloud is kind of the tool for creating it how you want to create it. And you're like, all right, now I will lay it all out, show all edge cases, how they all work. And this is a hand of document, kind of.
In many ways, yeah. And like pixel level refinement is still quite tedious to do in Claude, at least in my opinion.
Yeah.
Like if you're doing like, because it's just they're not consistent with the spacing for whatever reason, and the font, they would use random new font sizes all the time. Like I tried so many different ways to kind of standardize it, write it in Claude, but every time you spin up a new project, you kind of need to kind of go through the same saw and des again. Um, Whereas it's just kind of small quirks like that are still a little bit frustrating at times, but yeah, I still prefer Figma at the end of the day for like pixel level perfection, but I'm sure the tools, like maybe this conversation will be irrelevant by the end of the year as the models improve
Yeah.
you.
Yeah,
So
yeah, yeah. But we internally, when we build landing pages, we obviously also do it with Claude, right? And I had this funny situation where we wanted to make some edits on our landing page, and I was sitting with my designers, and I'm like, oh, we need to remove this, remove this, remove this. And Figma, I was just selected and remove, and over here he had to mark it and remove this. I'm like, man. This is so not optimal at all, We are using AI to speed up the whole process, but this is disaster. So yeah,
100%.
probably some kind of I mean, right now there's this integration of Figma and Claude that you can kind of integrate those. I haven't played with that, but do you have any experience with that connector?
Oh, no, I have unfortunately haven't. One of my teammates actually did a demo on that on Tuesday, but it seemed pretty automagical. Basically, he did a thing in a new design language, and he said, "Hey, can you convert this whole thing to Polaris?" And he just talked to it like a widget, the same way you would in Claude Code, and it just like rebuilt all the components and mapped it to our existing like Polaris design system library. It's pretty cool. I haven't gotten around to playing with it personally, but I definitely see like this is could
Yeah,
be really,
yeah.
really
This
awesome.
this is probably when I'm envisioning like the perfect design flow, that would probably be it, like doing, because that's exactly what you said. As a designers, we're used to canvas, we kind of like things visually, and then you're jumping to Cloud, which is like amazing tool, but we still kind of miss that canvas, right, where you could just select stuff and just like you like do this, this spacing is not as you want it to be. So yeah, I think that's probably the polishing element, I would say. This is where the canvas is needed, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
Mhm.
only you can write just like, okay, Claude, build me a thing, but I'm gonna go into canvas mode where I could literally like click on a thing and like drag it 2 pixels to the right, like
Yeah.
pixels to the left, bump up the font size from like a little floating panel or something like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
That'd be
I
ideal.
totally understand you.
Best of both
Yes.
worlds, right? Toggle between the two. I mean
Yeah,
that
so hopefully we're gonna get that. I think there's a lot of tools like this pencil.dev, or I think it's paper.dev and
pencil dot
pencil.design,
that.
or yeah. So these tools, if we could get a little bit of that, with integration with Figma and Cloud, yeah, I think it would be perfect. So right now we spoke about the process for the existing design system. So first of all, guys, listeners, if you don't, this is why we need design systems. If you want to build fast, if you want to have, let's say, even faster and better see with working with AI, I think having good design system is really helpful, right? Because you can just move faster, and um, you kind of have building blocks that you build on. But now let's talk about some more innovative and, let's say, crazy stuff. When you're building something from the ground up, let's say the D&D, this D&D app or Taco Night, like how do you approach projects when it's totally new?
Um, hmm. I'd say understanding. Okay, so I've in the midst of building a character sheet app from scratch right now, and it gave me a lot of empathy for both the engineers and PMs on my team as a result of it, because I realized to build something of reasonable complexity, it does require you to kind of break things down and scope things down to what makes sense, right? So it's like, okay, in the MVP, what do I want to ship? Typically, the way I would start it, it's kind of like it's still I always start with the same way I would build a real feature or a real product at work, which is okay, what is the baseline requirement for this to be minimally usable, right? Minimum viable product. You be like, okay, you need to be able to create a character. Your character needs to be able to see its equipment. You're able to see your
Mm-hmm.
stats. You don't even need level up at this stage. You don't even need multiple classes at this stage. Just the one guy. You see its stats and you see its equipment. That's it. So how do we build this out? Like the way I like to approach product development is always like build the simplest possible thing extremely well, then scale it out, then add complexity later on, instead of trying to do everything under the sun really, really poorly. Which I think is also the part where AI really kind of falters. The larger, the more vague the scope of work is, the worse it ends up being. But if you're just telling it to focus on something very, very granular, it's able to, you're spending more attention and focus on it. And the AI is able to kind of grasp that and kind of break that down a lot better as well. So,
Yeah, I
um,
think but when you use, personally, I'm also guilty to this, that working with Claude feels like you're kind of invincible, and you're telling it, build this feature, boom, it's done. But then it kind of encourages you to move forward fast, because like, oh, perfect, then build this, then build this, then build this. And by not uh, setting up this MVP, like as you said, defined too fast, what's happening that you're moving so fast that you have like a lump of features that are not perfect, and when you try to actually test it, it doesn't really work. I mean, maybe in most cases in a happy path it works perfect, but then there comes a lot of edge cases and real use where it breaks down. So when you're building the scope of your MVP, uh, I think a lot of people that are listening to us might have had this problem, that you're trying to define the scope of MVP, and the longer you work on it, the bigger it becomes. You know, like the bigger it then suddenly your MVP is like a full production 3.0 version and not really MVP. So, how do you approach in this new projects defining what is a real MVP?
Oh man. Playtest with people that I know, I would say. I think for D&D, this is fairly easy for me to get playtesters on. Just say, hey, I've made a better app than what's officially there. Literally, I'm like, okay, I'm done the first version out. I just literally observe them using it. Uh, I don't know if you've ever done like kind of live in person before, but especially if it's with your friends or family, they're like overly polite about problems your app has. It'd be like, oh, this is nice. And you just see them stuck on a script like 20 seconds, not knowing where you're like, okay, I need to fix the onboarding step here. Like clearly there's too much going on the screen, clearly. Where, they'll click in random places and you just say, hey, how did you feel about using the app? They're going to be like, oh, it's great. It's nice. But it just stops there. But like, no, from that I could observe there. But that's kind of what it is. I try to get people to just be like, okay, you used it. Would you use this instead of the other tools that you're already using? Or would you use this to replace paper? Right? Like, I think that's the thing with anyone who's played, board games or tabletop games. You can either do the planning on an app or you could do the planning in like using tactile paper stuff. A lot of people still prefer paper. So I'm kind of like, okay, what is it about the form factor of it that makes you gravitate towards the paper? And what is it that you're missing that you wish could exist? And I use that to basically generate my MVP at that stage. It's iterative development at the end of the day. You need to get user hands on your product as early as possible. You learn quickly, iterate quickly, test out new ideas, right? Not be afraid to fail. Just like that's kind of why I mentioned earlier. It's like it really did give me a lot of empathy and understanding in terms of how like good software is built at the end of the day. Because like
Yeah.
you're going through the full gamut of experience, right? Like, I imagine this is very much like what being a founder is like, but with financial stakes on the other side instead of just a crappy character builder app that nobody wants to use. So
Yes, yes. Personally, I think everybody who still prefers pen and paper for D&D is crazy. Because when you play a long game, when you rub these numbers and you write the new numbers and then you rub them again, you're kind of going through the paper. So it's insanely difficult to maintain it, in my personal opinion. But I kind of agree that the craft element is still there, and I can tell you the example because I personally use WhisperFlow app. I just like it. I'm not sponsored, but I just personally really like the app. It allows to dictate, right? And I had a friend who texted me that, hey, I built this alternative for WhisperFlow. I just use API from OpenAI, and it works. It's perfect. I'm like, buddy, it's all in details, like doing simple transcription, everybody can do it, but it's all about the small little elements that kind of make this experience beautiful. So as you said, when you're starting to build something and you're kind of developing it from scratch, you notice all those small I would say love elements, kind of like Johnny Ives used to say that, there are products where you can see the love from the creator, right? Like all the small details that kind of makes the interaction nice. For example, in Whisper, there's this thing when you're dictating and you say let's say a name or word, it kind of looks at your screen if this word appears and it kind of knows, oh, you're referencing probably this, and it pays this. It's a small element, but it kind of makes the whole experience of the dictation like so much better, right? So it's all about observing and all about learning. This also reminds me about this book. It's called The Mom Test. I don't know if you've heard about it.
uh do elaborate. Maybe, but
Yeah, so this is the book. It's called The Mom Test. This is the book about how to ask questions so not even your mom could lie to you. When you said that your friends are being polite, right? And you have to kind of find a way to ask them, like, is it actually good? If anybody's interested, I would really recommend. This is probably the shortest book you can find, and it's just a set of recommendations on how to ask questions so not even your mom can lie to you.
I
Uh,
love that the Johnny Ives quote. I think one thing that really stuck with me was one of the design leaders at Shopify talked about how, like, as creatives, at the end of the day, um, the emotional state that you're in really shows through your work, right? If you're approaching
yeah,
your work with anxiety and fear and sadness or anger, you kind of tell, like, hey, these are not the best product decisions, or it just feels lousy overall. But if you're approaching your work with positive energy, motivation, curiosity, and genuine appreciation for what you're building, like, that's kind of what really comes through to the user as well. And, like,
yeah.
it's so weird how, like, humans have this, like, deep, I think, like, as designers, we have this deep intuition for the amount of emotions embedded within, like, a thing that we create at the end of the day.
Yeah. Yeah. Because I totally agree. There can be same product with same amount of functions and possibilities, and one will be just lovely to use, and second will be just like, oh my God, again,
It's
right?
frustrating. It's
Like,
frustrating.
yeah,
You know the designer's probably frustrated. They probably didn't want to work on the thing. They didn't
yeah,
want
yeah.
to do wrong
Or
with it.
maybe it was even non-existent. Yes, I totally agree. So let's say we are talking about side projects, so like this ground up projects, I would say. Let's say you define, okay, what is my MVP? And then, we can go on example, as you said, on something that you build or you are building. Once you define this MVP, do you write it down or do you just kind of set it up in your head?
I do something kind of similar to you with WhisperFlow, but I use Mac Whisper, but it's just a
Yeah.
voice diction software, right? I'll just kind of talk about okay, I have this list. Usually it's stored as as a markdown file within Claude, and that just kind of lives at the head of the project as, like, this kind of like a little bit of like a holy grail
Sure.
um of, like, what it's supposed to be. But I think for a lot of people that can relate is the more you build, your thinking and principles and approach to building software changes over time. And, like,
Yeah.
basically it will be like, I'll do my side project for a week. And if I go back to that original, like, holy grail document that I look at it now, it's like, oh my God, so many of the requirements are now out of date. I'm
Yeah.
like, I tried this idea, it didn't work. We don't need this thing for the MVP, right? We cut that out for simplicity or usability's sake. So, but that's where Claude is really good for, like, I really like delegating the stuff I don't want to do to AI so I could save time to focus on the things that I want to do more instead. But it's like, once I kind of have a shape of that, generally I tell Claude to kind of start spitting ideas out, spitting it out. I'm like, okay, I have this idea. I saw this cool UI, this new way of interacting with it, build it out. I'll try it. And the most recent project that I'm working on, this character sheet builder, I'm now in V3 of it. What I mean by V3 is I did a V1. I didn't like any of it. The motion was good. The sliding gesture worked well on native mobile, but I didn't like the way the information architecture was laid out. So I literally told Claude, it's like, we're gonna start from complete scratch with
Yeah.
all the learnings and takeaways. We're gonna do it all over again. And so I did a V2 of it that now uses, like, a liquid glass UI. It looks better, and the motion for swiping on native is still correct. But I'm like, the editing experience doesn't make sense, and the glass UI is not the most, like, editable form. Does that make sense? Like, glass is nice to look at as a solid sheet, but it's not necessarily the most interactable and editable
Yeah.
thing. Because glass doesn't really work very well on input fields if you're looking at Apple's interaction system. It's all solid fields still, right? So I had
Yeah,
to
it's kind
evolve
of as an overlay, as a layer
it's
on
a
top,
sheet
right?
above. Yeah,
Yeah,
right.
yeah. So,
So
the question for you is, uh, let's say you did this V1, right? And then you had all these learnings. You look at it, and we're like, all right, we have to rework it. Do you just start totally new project and then you dictate a new PRD to it, or do you build on top of this specific thing?
I take the bits and pieces that make sense. So, for example, the backend is what I will keep if it's scalable. The Well, as designers, I'm less precious about the front end experience. I'll just toss out all the front end and just say, hey, we're gonna start from scratch using this as a new visual direction, completely anew.
I see, but you're still working within the same repo, right? Within the same folder, within the same files. All
That's right.
right, all right. Yes. Okay.
Yeah.
You're just saying like, all right, I can imagine the conversation looks something like, all right, Claude, listen, remove everything associated with frontend. We're starting anew, and then you're kind of giving the brain transfer like a 7 minute straight talk of how it should look right now. Yes.
Basically, yeah.
Now,
Very, very similar to my actual classes. Yeah.
okay, yeah, yeah, yeah. And um, uh, how does it then relate to the testing? You said that you're doing this, and let's say you did the new version, you improved it. Do you use Figma in this specific project?
I do, yeah, quite a bit. So actually, it's interesting because it's either because I need to create brand new assets and icon sets. There's a lot of great icon sets that are available online, but if you're looking at like kind of gaming icons, they usually have a lot more like flourish, um, gradients, depth, layering, shadows, etc. to them. Texture mainly. So like creating those assets, I had to do it in Figma basically. And let me see what else. Drafting out the actual layout from scratch had been somewhat challenging because there's no existing app out there today that I could think of that's a direct one-to-one. So I can't
Mm,
so I can't just say, "Hey, do what Airbnb's front landing page does, but like make it like XYZ," right? I literally can't do that. I have to cobble stuff together, and basically I did quite a bit of handcrafting for what I call the key screens. Those are like
yeah.
mural screens basically. Like,
But
okay,
did you design them in Figma or did you verbally explain it to Claude?
I designed them in Figma.
Mm,
Those ones I handcrafted, but those are also that's like the part where it sparks joy for me, so I don't mind doing it.
yeah.
Uh, Crafting it so much, it's a bit therapeutic. I mean, you hand it off to Claude and you're able to land with a much better output.
Yeah, yeah. Because I would say this part is actually fun, This like I personally when I use Claude, I use it because it's faster, because it allows me to brainstorm like more options. It's more interactive. It's kind of production ready, let's say something like that. But kind of as you say, when you have very important screens in part, like designing them in Figma is actually fun, right? You're kind of as you're designing, you're kind of brainstorming it. So yeah, maybe that's actually the part that mm, we shouldn't even cut out, because like it works. That's how we used to do this very innovative stuff that's ground up, and as you said, there's no reference point, right? It needs to be done totally anew. Mm-hmm.
Ye-
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, it's uh, one of the senior staff designers at Shopify, Jose. He wrote a really fantastic article on this, but the gist of it is he thinks Claude goes too fast sometimes. As in, because Claude, if you think about it, like AI tools, they train you to be impatient with the output. Any little bit of friction is not good. But if you think about the old way that we did design, it's like, okay, I'm going to go on a Pinterest. I'm going to go check out 8 different websites, competitors, and put a mood board together. Think about it, sketch it out. There's like, that's kind of how like creativity is formed. It does take time to steep at the end of the day. Claude, sure, it gives you an output, but it feels almost like it's unpredictably predictable, if that makes sense. You don't know what you're gonna get, but nothing that you're getting is like that too far fetched. Like there's nothing that Claude really puts out that you're just like, wow, this is like mind blowingly
Totally
creative.
different. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
very, very because it's still like remixing what's already there, right? But like which I really very much like resonated with his sentiment. But at the end of the day, we're at a time where moving fast and speed is a important distinguishing factor for both learning and shipping a successful product. So um
Mm-hmm.
that
Yeah,
is not
but the thing is, the we were talking a little bit about this uh, showing love in the products, like working out the details and working out stuff like that. And this element, it requires time to get something like that. You cannot rush this through. So on one side, you have this part where you gotta be patient, and you gotta sacrifice some time for key screens, key elements, and maybe if you want to make it personal, icons, because you just want to make it look as you want it to look. But on the other side, we kind of also want to go fast, and we want to make it ship as fast as possible. So this is gonna be kind of big level, let's say. But where do you think we should be fast, and where we should be patient? Like, I know it's kind of big picture speculation right now, but I would like to hear your thoughts on it.
Hmm. That's a great question. That's a great question. I don't have the best answer to that actually. Um,
I don't have it neither. We're
yeah,
just
sure,
bouncing
whatever.
ideas.
Yeah. The way I could really think about it is like low hanging fruit that you should do right away, where speed does matter more than getting it right, then go fast. But if it's something that is complex, ambiguous, and there's no clear solution for, maybe those are the places that require more patience.
Let's talk about this character card project that you're doing right now. When you look at the whole, there's free version of it, so you sacrificed quite a lot of time on it. Where did you move fast, and where did you slow down?
Hmm. It's a good question, actually. The parts I moved the quickest was once I realized a pattern is not scalable. Because like even when I was building out the MVP, right? Let's say if the 7 different requirements, I was kind of doing it. Okay, let's do 1, 2, and 3 well first, and then let's do layer in 4 because I just don't want to think about that stuff right now. I'll reserve space in the UI to do it, but oftentimes it's like kind of like, hey, I did 1, 2, 3. The second I have 4 in, like the screen is just overloaded. As soon as I kind of realized that, I would like, but when I was trying to assemble 1, 2, and 3 together, that was like, I was careful. I was very deliberate. I was doing those step by step to make sure all those things are accommodated as part of the experience. But once I say 4, I'm like, I just can't see a way to add this in. AI, can you help me add 4 in? And no matter where they put it, it just didn't make sense. So I'm like, okay, at that point, let's just restart from scratch, burn the page down, restart new canvas, new inspiration. So like do a new version, but with 1, 2, 3, 4 all completely kind of thought out, but in a completely different layout. Like that's where I kind of move fast on. But when it's crafting each of those individual components and widgets, like I was very, very kind of diligent when it
Yeah.
comes to the asset work. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
It's
yeah, yeah. I think it totally makes sense. There is this moment where you kind of, I think, when you move fast, you're kind of getting to the point, and then you're validating. And this is the moment when you're like checking, okay, does it actually make sense what I did? And you're kind of rethinking it. But then you're getting next insight, and I think we're rushing in again, and then stop. All right, did it make sense? And it's kind of like sprint pause, more or less, kind of like that. Maybe I'm thinking about my own process, how I'm building. I when I'm working on a feature, I'm kind of like a lunatic. I'm just going at it, like adding elements. But then once I do it, I'm like, all right, does it actually make sense, right? And then I'm kind of testing it, looking like, oh, maybe the whole thing should be different. So yeah, that's kind of like that. So, Javan, look, we're getting close to the end. I mean, we have a episode that's totally packed with interesting knowledge. I always think that the most interesting parts for people are the low-level parts. Where you talk about specific cases, specific projects, specific stuff like that. It's way more interesting that we are talking about. Will AI take jobs? Stuff like that, which nobody actually knows. And we have quite a lot of it over here. So it's been a really great episode. And I always like to close with the section about portfolio. Because I talk with a lot of designers, a lot of juniors, a lot of seniors, and people are wondering, how should the portfolio and case studies of a modern designer look like? Obviously, there's no one answer to this question, but looking at your perspective as you're, working with your colleagues, as you're doing your own stuff, how do you think the portfolio of modern designers should look like?
Um, Show not tell, I would say, is the biggest high level advice I could give. And to own your strength and weaknesses. I think everyone has a very unique story, um, based on how they grew up, based on their interests, based on what really gives them energy in life. If you build a portfolio that really kind of like where your personality and your interests and your love, what energizes you really kind of shines through, it's like the thing that we're talking about before, right? The love, the craft is apparent, and the quality of the work is going to be a lot better than someone who may be trying to imitate somebody else. Um, because but that's not like your story necessarily, right? I really like portfolios where there's like a lot of like cohesiveness and focus. There's a clear theme for either what you gravitate towards projects wise or industry wise or where you want to be. Um, it's not trying to be too many things at the same time, and like pick a thing to focus on, be really, really good at that one thing is what I would say is pretty important. But then the third piece I would say is definitely having a lot of like those, like a playground section where you're showing your fun projects, right? Your portfolio is meant to be like it's a tool to be hired at the end of the day, but the playground is where you can have tons of fun. And the more of those projects that are carefully crafted or like really delightful, the it kind of shows off your broad, like they're showing off like a broader skill set. I think it's a lot more useful than I'm a little bit bored of case studies these days now. That's kind of what I mean by like that's because I think case studies are more like tell, right? At the end of the day, it's like you're showing that you can do the work, but the fun part where I get the most energy from consuming portfolios is still like in the playground section. Like, let me go into your side project, let me play around, let me interact with it, let me see how it looks and feels, right? Like that's the show part. It's kind of what
Yeah,
it,
yeah, I see. Nobody wants to read so much, right?
that's the advice they give you. They're like 30 seconds per case study. That's the amount of time the hiring managers and recruiters are spending on your portfolio, which I'm like, that's probably fair. But like, I may be spending up to 10 minutes on your side projects. I may even share your side project link with a friend or like a
Yeah.
colleague. So
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's kind of like, you find this mini game that you kind of got addicted at some point and you just
yeah, right.
start clicking, right? That's that's kind of it, because people are fixing on this, you only have 30 seconds, stuff like that. But if you actually have something interesting, people are gonna stay longer because it catches the eye, it catches the attention, right? So yeah, that's there's a lot of conversation that attention spans are so long, but people still go to cinema. They still watch movies. They kind of still can go through the whole thing. So maybe it's all about making it interesting, clicky, interactive, and fun. And yeah.
Did,
So
did,
look, Javan, thank you. It's been a really great episode. I totally loved what happened over here. Thank you for chat. Thank you for sharing all your knowledge. And yeah, thank you. That's it.
yeah, it's been such a pleasure chatting with you, Sam.